Shalom everyone, and this week's parasha is Ki-Tetse. You can find it in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 21, verse 10. And it says, it starts with the words, Ki-Tetse la-milchama lo-oivecha, as you wage war against your enemies, Unetano Hashem Elokecha biyadecha, and the Lord your God will give him in your hand. Veshavita shivyo, and you will capture his spoils. And then you see in the captivity a beautiful woman, and you desire her, and you take her as a wife. And it goes on like this. And the sages are raising terrible questions like, who went to war in the biblical times? Only the righteous people. Because we read in the previous parasha, whoever was afraid, whoever was not so certain in his ability to go to the war, went home. So who stayed? Only the people who are really righteous, with the real certainty and passion to fight and to protect their nation. So how could you talk about, a soldier in the war will see a beautiful woman and you can take her? This is impossible that the Bible speaks like this. So on the simple level, there are many explanations, but since the simple level is not our business right now, because we're not going into any biblical war right now, but the real biblical war is that what we just spoke about it last week's parasha, Parashat Shoftim. And there, we already had an introduction. And over there it said, when you go to a war and you see a horse, and we explained, who's your real war? Even when we're speaking about going for a war against another human being or group of people, the first war should be held inside, because if I'm afraid, or I'm hateful, or I am mixed up, or I'm full of all kinds of terrible emotions, when I go to war, I already lost. Because what happens when we are messed up emotionally, any wisdom or smart mind that we have is not going to be useful for us, because we are not going to be able to use it, because whatever we're going to do is going to be used against us. You never go to any challenge before you tune up your mind and your heart, because if you're not really connected to your true self, how would you be able to face the challenge and achieve victory, a true victory? Victory does not mean that somebody gave you some pain and you gave him pain in return, and that's a revenge. That's not victory. This is like getting even. And when you get even, it's a never-ending story. And when you're getting even, it's like, what's your basic interest? When you study Kabbalah, the first question is, what is the goal? And we learn that the goal of every human being, is to be fulfilled with the light of God. Even the wicked ones, they want to be happy. Deep inside, they want to be happy. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, my goal is to hate and to destroy. It's only sick people. And sickness is something that has to be healed. But normal people, if you ask them what do they want to feel today, everybody wants to be happy, to love and to be loved. That's the real self. So, when we come into this parasha, Ki-Tetse la-milchama lo-oivecha, and many sages discuss the thing, why does it say you wage a war against your enemies? And then it says, and your God, your Lord, will give him. You start plural, and then you go single. Why? Because we think that we have many enemies. There are certain kind of people that are not nice, or let's say they are not really intelligent enough to support your righteous, great goal to achieve something. Okay, what about the weather? What about the coronavirus? What about, there's so many challenges on the way. So you have many enemies. There's health issues, there are health issues, there's a government issues, there's so many other issues. There are indecent people on the way, there's so many other issues. Okay? But when you go to the war and you really become professional about it, which means you're really working on, as we said before, on your spiritual quadrants, not just your intelligence quadrants, and not just your emotional quadrants. You're working on your SQ, your spiritual quadrants. You realize you have only one enemy. Who is your real enemy? That's your dark side. We all have a dark side. Why? The main purpose we come to this world is because there are no free lunches. The Creator gave us all of it for free in the beginning. That's how we were created. However, we didn't like it. We wanted to achieve it by work, to own it, to invent it, to create it. So we got the dark side. Each one of us has the dark side, and remember, our dark side is a servant of the Creator as everything else in the picture of this universe. And there's one picture. It's all about giving us the opportunities to become light, to become creators. Okay? So, the real thing is to wage war on the real enemy. Okay? And there are many aspects to that. So, when it says you wage war against your enemies, and then you realize there's only one enemy, it is your dark side. Because our dark side makes us blind. The moment we connect to the real side, to the true self, to that part inside us, the soul, that is always connected to the light of the Creator, over there we can find also the knowledge, the know-how, the brilliance, the ability to invent, the ability to channel the right information and wisdom from the endless. Because that's a given. The only thing we have to do is to wage war. And we explained last week also, if you try to wage war against others, against whatever you think is your enemy, even against your dark side, and you're not going to the war with God Himself, there's no way you're going to achieve it. Nobody can win over his dark side, his hubris, his pride, his pain, his prejudice, narrow-mindedness. Without the Creator, there's no way. As it says, and we're going to learn about it later on, en ha'asir matir et atzmo mibeit ha'asurim. It says in the Talmud, in the beginning of Tractate Brachot, the first one, the prisoner can never unleash himself from prison by himself. You need help from the outside, from outside the box. And if you don't have that help from the Creator, forget it. And so when you wage a war, and here the Opter Rebbe, the Ohev Israel, said, just the thing that you wage war against your enemy, and you don't give up, you're already doing the job. And that's why at the end of the parasha, the completion of the parasha, what is it about? Also, it looks like, if you read the simplistic aspect, it's very archaic and irrelevant. Okay? It says, I'm sorry, that's at the end of chapter 25, verse 17. Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek. Remember what the Amalek did to you, baderech, on the way, b'tzetchem Mitzrayim, on your way out of Egypt. Asher karcha b'derech, okay, that he got you on the way, and he hit all the people behind, the slow, the tired, the sick, and you are tired, ותעייף ויגע ולא ירא אלוהים. And you're tired, and you're weak, and you don't have the awe of God. So, verse 19, when you settle in the promised land, you go and you eliminate the nation of Amalek. Do you know any Amalek in the neighborhood? No, because there's no nation like this anymore. So who is the Amalek? So all the sages speak the Amalek. Amalek, Gematria, numerical value, doubt, Safek. Safek is also the same letters as Pasek, cut off. That doubt, the moment we have a doubt that we can achieve victory in our true war against our dark side, our fears, our doubts, our anger, our hatred, our pain, our lack of self-esteem, all of that stuff, the moment that's the Amalek. That's the biggest thing, because that moment we don't believe that we are destined to succeed. We have no other choice. The question is, what kind of a way we're going to take. So the Rebbe said, the fact that you wage a war means that you killed the Amalek. You overcame the doubt. Asher karcha b'derech, it's very hard to explain, but the word karcha comes from the word kar, cold. The doubt makes you cold. You want to do something, you're really excited, and then comes a doubt. No, I don't know if I can't, I'm not capable, it's not going. So before that you were very hot about it, and now you're cold about it. And you just, want to get by. So the fact that you overcame the Amalek, which is the most depth, these few verses in the end of chapter 25, it says, that's halacha, that's a Jewish law, that the most important verses of the whole Torah. And nobody has an excuse not to come to the Torah reading to listen to it. Why? Because if you overcome the Amalek, overcome the doubt, then you can do everything. The fact that you have to wage war, which means you have total certainty you're going to make it because God is with you, and with His partnership, there's no way you can lose, because the victory is a given. The question is, how long would it take and how much would that cost? That's the only question. 1 lifetime, 2 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes, but it's given. We have no choice to lose. Only just which way we're going to take. So the moment, says the Rebbe, the moment you wage war, you already won. And therefore, he doesn't say you fought. It says you wage war and God will give him in your hands. Which means the fact that you just wage war, you won. Yeah, there's a war, but there's all the physical world is full of illusions. But the fact that you don't give up, that's a victory. And therefore, the verse, I'm reading back chapter 26, 21 verse 10, Veshavita shivyo, and you take his spoils. Should be, and you take spoils from him. Right? No, he took your soul. What is the beautiful woman? All the Kabbalistic, Hasidic, spiritual commentators said, no, the beautiful woman that's always an expression of the soul. That the soul, every human soul, is beautiful from its inception. From the beginning. The inception is not when the pregnancy started. That's not when your soul was born. Our souls, all human souls, were born in the endless. In the original let there be light. That's when our souls were created. So they're all beautiful. They're all this beautiful woman. So the moment you go to war with a certainty, you have no idea what you're going to get, but then suddenly, in the middle of the war, you realize how beautiful is your soul. How capable of loving. How much beauty is there in each one of us, in the soul, in the core, in the true self that we have. This is what we're talking about. And it's always being read before Rosh Hashanah, because this is the time of the year. Not the only time, but it's the time because we are really near the last battle before the new year is being generated, and we go into routine of the next battle, which is the next coming year. So we'll continue with a very important tool. The whole parasha, although in the simple text in Deuteronomy, it looks like many, many laws, that some of them are really irrelevant, it looks like, to our modern life. But all of them are deep advices and rules of how to win the war and to capture a beautiful soul, and now we'll have ownership over it because we overcame the enemy. Now, so I'm going right now to the Zohar, Perush HaSulam, verse 52. And it says in the Zohar as follows, in Perush HaSulam, ובגין דהוקמו המראי מתניתין, לא המדרש הוא העיקר אלא המעשה. And therefore, the Tanaim, the ancient teachers, they wrote the Mishnah, which is the base for the Talmud. We talk about 1st, 2nd century, beginning of 3rd century. And the same people are the people who wrote the Zohar. Okay? And they said something very famous, that's in the Mishnah, לא המדרש הוא העיקר. Okay? The learning is not the real thing, it's not the main thing, אלא המעשה. The action is the main thing. Okay, so in Judaism, from that verse, we learn that, you go to the synagogue, nobody asks you what are the base values of your faith in God. Nobody asking you that. Oh, there's in the prayer book that the Maimonides main principles and stuff like this, but nobody asks you for that. What people are looking at is what are your actions. This is the most important thing. The actions are more important than the talks. And we all know that. People are very good about talking about values and ethics and stuff like this, but when it comes to the real actions, business, relationship, whatever, that's when we are not so, that's where the work is about. Everybody knows about speaking about vision and values. Every company around the world who's really into the big market must have great vision and great values. It's all about green and honesty and serving humanity and stuff like this. The question is, when it comes to the real day-to-day work, with every customer, with every worker, with the supplier, with the environment and so on, are these applied in the action? Who cares for what your vision is about? We care about your actions. But that's logic, right? No. It's logic, but it's beyond logic, and the Zohar explains why. And you have to know a little bit of Kabbalah in order to understand it. But I'll explain. People don't know exactly. ובמקום אחר אמרו, in another place it says, there's another place it says, כל שיראת חטאו קודמת לחוכמתו, חוכמתו מתקיימת. Whoever has awe before his wisdom will be everlasting. But whoever has wisdom but has no awe of God, and we spoke about it in a previous parashot, has no awe of God, then his wisdom has no use. It's like, it looks like wisdom, but the moment life is testing you, you realize it's not a wisdom. It's not really wisdom. אמא הילה, תשובה, חוכמה אבא הילה. כד הקדים ה' זהירה, דהי מצווה. שריה עלי תורה, דהי וו. וכד הדגים מהירה לחוכמה, דהי ה' הילה. שריה עלי חוכמה, דהי י' ויקרי בן. ומכאן בנים אתם להשם אלוקיכם. Okay. So, why is it Kabbalistically so important? There's just a statement that I read from the Zohar, which is basically from the Mishnah, 2,000 years old, but that's, this is the oral Torah that was given on Mount Sinai. And again, I'll repeat what it says. If the person has awe before his study and acquired wisdom, titles, he has a PhD in this and this and this and this, okay? Awe has to come first. And what did we say in previous parashot about awe? Awe is the ability to connect the heaven and the earth. On one hand, you're responsible for your doings. On the other hand, you know that God is with you, and you have to be responsible for whatever you're doing, because you have to bring the divine into everything you're doing. So you have a combination of knowing the rules on one hand, responsibility because you know how great is that system and how powerful and awesome, because awe you have in awesome and in awareness. Okay, when you have that feeling of how awesome is the universe and the creation of God, and you have an awareness of that, and you apply it in every action, that's called yirah, awe. Because you have a sight, you have appreciation, and you have love towards the Creator and His creation. And you know that the creation is sophisticated enough to give us all what we need in order to achieve our goals. That's a little bit a definition of awe. Now, awe does not mean fear. Fear debilitates. Fear gets you into anger and pain and hatred. Awe pushes you to be more responsible, more creative, and more loving, and more careful. Okay? Remember that. Now, so the Zohar explains how does it work in a Kabbalistic term, in the technology of Kabbalah. Okay, and it says like this. The awe of sin, what does it mean, yirat chet, which is very important, means that very important part of awe, since you know how awesome is the creation, how great is the universe, and how loving is the Creator, you know that if you're not careful enough and you're not knowledgeable enough, you can mess it up. So you have this huge respect to the universe, to the creation, to the creatures of the universe, because all of them are part of this amazing masterpiece, which is God's creation. So when you have that, you're very careful not to mess up the creation and not to mess up yourself. Okay? Of course, when you have awe, you don't have hubris and no pride and no ego, because you have no space for that. That consciousness is called by the Zohar Ima Ila'ah, the Supreme Mother, which is Firat Bina, which is called Teshuvah. Okay? So, let's go back. When we're talking about the upper Sefirot, we know that the upper Sefirot, we have Chokhmah and Bina. We have, which correspond to the upper Yud, to the letter Yud of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Tetragrammaton, and the Yud corresponds to Chokhmah. The Hey, the upper Hey, corresponds, of the Tetragrammaton, corresponds to Bina. Okay? So if you look at the Yud is a small letter. Why? Because it's the source. The Yud, every Hebrew letter, when you start writing it, you start with a Yud. And then you continue to the rest of the shape of the letter. The only letter that you just let it stay just with the source, that's a Yud. So, like the Sfirat Chokhmah, all other Sefirot are embedded in Chokhmah and they spring out down the line on the tree of life from the Yud, which is Sefirat Chokhmah. That's why also Yud is a number. You know, every Hebrew letter is a number. The number 10, which means all 10 Sefirot are hidden inside the Yud, because the Yud is the cause, so all the effects are included in the seed, in the cause. Now, but the Yud needs a vessel to contain it. That's called the Hey. The Hey looks like a vessel. The Yud has no dimensions, it's just a point. Okay, but the Hey has 2 dimensions. It's like a house. Okay, that's the letter Hey. Now, that's why the Hey is the vessel for the Yud. So what did he say? That the awe of God, that's the Bina, that's the Hey. That's a vessel to contain what? The wisdom. Which means a person who has wisdom, real true wisdom, is called Abba, the Father, the Supreme Father. שמקדים הקטנה שהיא מלכות, שהיא מצווה, שורה עליו תורה שזה אנפין שוביו. Okay, so, if we're saying so, the awe, if you have awe and you respect the wisdom, you respect the creation and the creator of that creation, and you understand that the creation is sophisticated and it's all like a whole. That's very important, because that corresponds to the beginning of the Zohar of Parashat Ki-Tetse. And the beginning of the Zohar of Parashat Ki-Tetse says that the worst thing that you can do is Lashon Hara, bad-mouthing the creation, bad-mouthing Betulat Israel, which is the Shekhinah. What is the Shekhinah? The divine presence, the creation. The moment you start looking for what's wrong with God's creation, you are bad-mouthing the Shekhinah. And whoever bad-mouths the Shekhinah, there's no way he can get away without death, because he's killing himself. So it's like bad-mouthing the Shekhinah is a result of being disrespectful for the creation. Okay? So whoever in history was, the moment a person is disrespectful for the creation, for God's creation, of course, whatever information you're going to collect about the creation, you always will have complaints. This is not right, and this is not right, this is not fair, this is not good, where was God when, and stuff like this. And that's a waste of time, and more than that, as we go forward. The moment you don't have the awe, you will never be able to connect the dots and to have true lasting wisdom. Because too many trees, you don't see the forest. So all of that information that you collect, the moment you are blaming reality for your problems, it's like it's not that simple. When you are complaining and blaming the whole day, it's like you bad-mouthing the creation. Because what are you saying? This was not in the plan. This was not in the program. This is faults in the creation. Therefore, these are faults in the creator. Therefore, the creator is not perfect, since his creation is not perfect. The moment you have that attitude, you're not waging war against your enemy. you are basically cooperating with the enemy, because you're cooperating with Amalek, with a doubt. Because what is a doubt? The doubt is the worst thing. It is known since the 70s and early 80s in research. I'm talking about psychology of diseases, that when a person goes through a deep trauma and pain and suffering, and the person reaches that place that he is in total lack of certainty about the future. More than that, he is totally sure that the future is bleak and dark, and he has no power to deal with it. That despair, which is part of the Amalek, will create, if the person is into that for a few weeks, that will finally come out as cancer or other terminal diseases. This is it's like a death wish. The moment you deep inside in total despair and you're not willing to fight anymore, that's it. Game over. That's how dangerous Amalek is about. Okay? On the other hand, tikva, hope. Tikva in Hebrew comes from the word kav, a line. As long as you have some line connected with the Creator, everything can happen. Everything will happen. Okay? So, what is Zohar saying? A person can study Zohar thousands of pages, even by heart. The writings of the Arizal, the writings of other Kabbalists. But if the person has so much wisdom, but he does not have awe, he doesn't have trust that the universe is complete and whatever is happening is for the good, to give every human being the ability to overcome the darkness so he can win his soul over, then it says that wisdom would not sustain and it will turn into poison. Okay? And we spoke about it last week when the sages are saying, Chokhmat Adam Ta'ir Panav. How do we know a person is really wise? His face are shining. Which means, if the person is so wise, he has PhD, he wrote so many books of philosophy, but the person is always angry about people's stupidity and foolishness and stuff like this, he's not really wise. That's a fake wisdom. He has wisdom, but he has no awe. Without the awe, there's no vessel for the wisdom to hold on and to flourish. But that's not all of it. It's not enough. The next thing, כשמקדים ה' הקטנה דהיינו מלכות שהיא מצווה, שורה עליו תורה שהיא זעיר אנפין שהיא ו'. וכשמקדים יראה שהיא ה' עליונה לחוכמה, שורה עליו חוכמה שהיא י', ונקרא בן, דהיינו בן י' ק', בינה, ומכאן בנים אתם להשם אלוקיכם. What is he saying? He's explaining in verse 54, then we'll go back to the conclusions. כשמקדים תורה למצווה, או חוכמה ליראה, מתהפך השם עליו. So as we said, the yud of the tetragrammaton is the wisdom, the accumulation of the great knowledge of the universe. But it needs a vessel which is a total trust, awe. How great is the wisdom, how great is the creation, even though I don't see everything, but I know it's all there for me. That awe is the vessel to contain the wisdom so it can flourish. On the lower level, the Vav symbolizes Zeir Anpin, which is Torah. Torah, what is Torah? Torah is the study of the Torah. The study of the Torah. It's not just wisdom, but it's the wisdom of the Torah, Mount Sinai, and so on. But can the Torah hold without the mitzvah? What is the mitzvah? The actions. The actions, because the actions that corresponds to Lelohei, to Malchut. No, says the Zohar. What is a mitzvah? Is the actions, which means you can study Torah, can study the Zohar, you can study all the Torah and all the stuff, but when it comes to actions, real actions, giving charity, getting up in the morning to pray, and all of that stuff, commitment to just make these things happen, okay? And overcome our own habits, our own fears, and really to be able to manifest those values in the physical world, even when it's very, very uncomfortable. Overcoming the pain and so on, and sticking to the right actions. That's called the mitzvah. And at the same time, do the actions, and knowingly that not just it's the right actions, those actions are the vessel to receive the light of God. So what happens, says the Zohar, if you don't behave like, if you don't have yirah, and you don't have the mitzvot, the real physical actions against the comfort zone, the fight, the physical fight, not just a mental fight, but also the physical fight, to do it right and to be a human being. Derech eretz kadma leTorah. Behave yourself. You simply, when people know you, they know that you behave yourself before being righteous. Okay? The Zohar says if you do not do that, when the wisdom comes before the awe, and the Torah study comes before the menschlichkeit, which means the behavior, the behavior, the honest behavior on daily stuff, then what happens? You turn the letters around. And when you turn the letters around, you create judgment. Because you change the true order. Instead of Yud K Vav K, it becomes the opposite. The Vav becomes the opposite. And when the opposite, then everything becomes judgment. And you don't understand. There are those people, they think they do the right thing. They study a lot, they meditate a lot, they learn a lot of books. They do all of that stuff, but they don't work on awe and not on the real actions. And then, you know, what does it mean when you bring a lot of light? Because the Torah brings light. Wisdom brings light. But what if you bring so much light, but you don't have a vessel? The light burns you off. One of the reasons the Zohar says, Parashat Tazria, 4 plagues: wisdom, values, but there's no follow-up. So what happens? There's no vessel to hold that light, and it burns you down. Judgment. What happens when you have judgment? Says the Zohar, then you have problem. Sustenance. People asking, I'm studying so much Kabbalah, I'm reading so much Zohar, I'm doing Dana Bekoach, I'm praying a lot, and I have problem to make a living. Where is all? What about the actions? What about the manifesting in the physical actions? And when push comes to shove, it's real. You have awe. What does it mean, awe? You're not complaining. Oh, whatever I learned is nonsense because I studied, I read so much Zohar, because you don't have awe. You're not working on your yirah. And then, because all of this plenty that you're drawing by your study and your wisdom has no vessel, not in the upper world, not in the lower. There's no hay for holding the yud. There's no hay to hold the vav, the lower hay to hold the vav. You turn it around, it becomes, and we know instead of yud k vav k, it becomes k vav k yud. And that is judgment. Vekashim mezonotav shebatorah kikiyat yam suf. Then it becomes like splitting the Red Sea just to make a living, simple living. Same will be Ke'en Zei Hageulah. The same thing will be during the redemption. Im zachu yetzu berachamim. If they merit, they'll come out of the exile with rachamim, with mercy. Why? What do you mean im zachu? When you put the yud before the hey, which means you create the hey as a vessel for the yud, and you create the last hey as a vessel for the vav. Then it's yud, k, every letter in its place. The result, it will be with rachamim, when it's coming with yirah. V'im lo makdim rachamim, but if there's no rachamim, when there's rachamim, when there's a vessel to receive so much light, because what is redemption? A lot of light. But if you don't have a vessel for the light burns you down. And that's why the Talmud, on its great illustration about the redemption, in the Talmud of Sanhedrin, page 97, with all the signs for Mashiach. And we spoke about it before. And the bottom line is about those people who are like bats. They're waiting for Mashiach to come, but they don't have awe, and they don't have the mitzvah. They're not really doing the work. They're waiting for the Mashiach to come and to do it for them. So deep inside, they doubt the creation. They doubt the Creator. They don't really put the effort to build the vessel. For them, Mashiach times all of that light is going to be terrible pain. And it will be suffering. And that's why when we are in a plague, it means it's like wake up. You can't go on with the same kind of life you had before. You have to create a vessel. Well, how do you create a vessel? First, the mitzvot. What are the biggest mitzvot? Helping others. Love others as you love yourself. How do you do that? Charity, caring, helping, community, family. Getting out of yourself, being there for others. Honesty. Walk your talk. Don't speak about great values. And I am for unity of all human beings, and I hate those people on the way. How can you hate and love at the same time? You can't. So the moment you're hateful, it means that you let fear and negativity to take over. You allow Amalek to run your awareness. You can't hate people at the same time. Be for Mashiach, you're not. Yeah, but I hate the ones who don't believe. You hate. Hatred is never for a reason. Hatred is the biggest disease in the world. No justification for hatred. Not even a righteous hatred. Okay? So, we'll skip few more verses to another one that will complete the picture. I'm jumping right now in the Zohar of Parashat Ki-Tetse to verse 105. ולא לחינם אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, כל העוסק בתורה ובגמילות חסדים ומתפלל עם הציבור, מעלה אני עליו, כאילו פדה אותי ואת בניי מבין העקום. Now remember, the Zohar says, if you behave this way and you create awe as a vessel for the wisdom and actions as a vessel for the Torah, okay, which means you even sweat to prepare for Shabbat. You sweat in order to serve other people and to care for other people. Then you have the vessel for the wisdom to come in. Okay? Then the Zohar says, what we read before, I just didn't translate it. Then Zeranpin becomes, if we said that that Chokhmah is Abba, the Supreme Father, and Bina is the Supreme Mother, we're talking about in the Sfirot level. Okay, it's all relative. Then we become the Supreme Son. Because what is Bina? The letters of Ben Yud K, the son of Yud K, because Bina is the mother of Zeranpin. So we all become the sons of God, God's sons. As we read before, Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. You are God's sons. You have to behave yourself because you represent your Father. That's part of the awe, consciousness. I am representing my Father in every walk, in every talk in my life. I have to be really aware of it. Okay? Because I represent my Father in heavens. Because the moment you present yourself like this, you become the Son of God. Okay? When that is your consciousness, and that's the calling of each one of us. Okay? So, says God, whoever is dealing with the Torah, which means, it doesn't say studying, it means that everything you do, business, family, relationship, everything, neighbor, whatever you do it with the thought, how do I apply the Torah in this physical moment, in this behavior? How do I bring the light of God to that physical action? If it's selling or buying or making food or whatever, talking on the phone with a client. Ma'aleh ani alav, and you're also doing charity, public work, community work, ומתפלל עם הציבור, and you pray with the community. Ma'aleh ani alav, it's considered, says the Creator, like He redeemed me and my sons from among the idol worshippers. So the Zohar is asking, והרי כמה בני אדם שעוסקים בתורה בגמילות חסדים מתפללים עם הציבור, but there's so many people. They deal with the Torah, they do charity work, they pray with the community, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy Blessed Be, and the Shekhinah are not being redeemed. How come? Umeshiv, and the answer is, Haperushu, the meaning, it's not enough just to do the actions on the physical layer, because it says so. That does not redeem the Holy Blessed Be and the Shekhinah. Just a second. They don't need to be redeemed, but it's all in our level. In our level, in a physical level, do we see the Shekhinah everywhere we go? No, we see lies, we see deception, we see dishonesty, we see cruelty, too much. We don't see the Shekhinah on the physical level of the way of life around the globe. So we know that the Shekhinah is in exile. Right? That's very simple. Our job is to bring it down to this physical world. That's our job. To make God the king over the physical realm too, not just in the heavens. Whoever knows the song after the Seder, Passover Seder, Echad Eloheinu, we have one God, Sheba Shamayim, in the heaven, Ve'ba'aretz, and on the earth. It's not just on the heaven. Oh, God sits in the heaven. No, we have to feel God here. How? When we have awe. You feel that you go to war with God, you will see Him in every aspect, and by doing that, says the Zohar, you redeem God and His Shekhinah from the exile. So, what do you do when you study Torah, and when you deal with the Torah, and when you do business, and you talk to your wife, to your husband, to your kids? You're always thinking how that aligns with the Torah. How do I become the Son of God in this physical action right now? Why? Because when I'm doing that, I'm כדי לחבר השכינה עם הקדוש ברוך הוא. I'm uniting the Shekhinah, the divine presence, with the Holy Blessed Be. ולא לשום כוונה אחרת, without any other intention. Not to have a seat in the Garden of Eden, not to be saved when the great moment is coming and the Messiah is coming and all the disbelievers, the non-believers, will be burned to ashes. No, this should not be my intention. My intention is to be God's Son. I'm connecting the Holy Blessed Be and the Shekhinah in every action that I'm doing. That's why I have awe, because I know how awesome is every action, speech, part of my behavior, because that applies to the celestial world and the physical world in all means, by all means. V'gmilut chesed, and what does it mean doing charity? הרי העמידו כי אין חסיד אלא מתחסד עם קונו. Who is the real person of chesed? Chassid. You know, you heard the word chasidim or chassid. Chassid is not somebody who's dressed in black with a pious and a, you know, and they're dancing whatever. Okay, and learning chassidut, whatever picture you have about chassidim. A real chassid, says the Zohar, is somebody hamitchased im kono. He is doing chesed with his God, with his creator. Sheperusho, which means kol ha-mitzvot שהוא עושה, all the mitzvot that he's doing, all the physical actions that he is doing are for one purpose. כדי לגאול בזכותם את השכינה מן הגלות, to redeem the Shekhinah from the exile. What does it mean? Without any other intention. בזה הוא עושה חסד עם הקדוש ברוך הוא, because what he's doing chesed with the Creator. Why? What was the purpose of the creation? So the Creator can dwell in the creation, which means that we, his children, can contain his light. How can we contain his light, as we said? When we transform ourselves. When we have total trust and faith that he's with us any moment, and there's nothing else in our mind, just the awareness that we have to fight without any doubt, to fight all dark thoughts, all physical elusive thoughts. The fight is that every action has a celestial, magical aspect, dimension, and my consciousness during those actions is crucial. That's called awareness. That's called awe. When we do it because, you know, like a son that is crazy about his father. So every action that he's doing is to make his father's will come true. That's the awe we're talking about. So what the Zohar says, when somebody lays tefillin or gives charity or does anything, he does it so the light of the Father can be revealed in among his children, his creation. And it can be revealed only through our own actions. So when you invest so much in the actions, but you also invest in the consciousness, the light comes down and then reality unites. The heavens and the earth, the light and the vessel, the holy blessed be he and the Shekhinah, then united the Yud with the Hey, the Vav with the Hey, then the vessel can contain the light. And then we have victory. The result, that's the end of the parasha. That's how you eliminate the Amalek from the world. How do you eliminate the world? Amalek from the world, the Zohar says, and the Arizal, that's in the Kadesh, it gadal v'it shmei rabbah. The name, the greatness of the name of God will be glorified and holy, sanctified. By what? By our actions, by our behavior. If you see a person that is in awe and excitement and is really careful about what he's doing, you become careful yourself. It's like circles of influence, and the whole world is being elevated because you started a new wave. And that's the consciousness that we want to enter the new year with. Thank you so much, and a lot of success.